All right. I want to talk about some stuff this morning because I can't help myself. Um, where to begin? So, I got some messages this morning from part of what prompted this is Yosef sent a message about this concern of St. Paul calling himself the chief of sinners, or that, we just have that in the Orthodox liturgy, and that being, good morning, Matthew, that being potentially related to POS theology, which also Michael was telling me that I need to have. I probably should if I'm going to up my game. I need to improve my production value, and because CW makes fun of the way I do my screen. But then should also, all my little Lukeisms and things I say, like POS theology, I should be able to run a little clip of this is POS theology. We're Chezi suggested after the last live stream that we plug the live stream transcript into AI, and it should give us a summary of what is TLC, this little corner of the internet. So I should have little clips or notes or definitions or summaries or something like that. That's a way to use AI to be able to help people bridge some of the jargon and the lingo and all that stuff. What's up, Phlebas? So actually, I just want to read that for a while, really quick, because I actually I have that all, Anthony, good morning. I have that as like a, what was that? It was a little summary of what is this little corner of the internet. But you think I could find it in all of my flipping mess of phones and pictures and things? All right, here it is. Let's see. So Gavin did this for me. Gavin, thank you very much. Gavin Palmer, what a stud. Give me the most novel points and describe TLC. And this was the response. The content from the YouTube video transcript involves a deep and complex discussion revolving around various subjects, including the nature of Christianity, the role of art and magic in shaping consciousness, the impact of technology and capitalism on society, and the importance of long-form conversations in understanding and appreciating different perspectives. The TLC, which, I don't know, AI said is the living church, which is fascinating in parentheses, is described as a space that is distinct from what is referred to as, quote, Christian YouTube. It is portrayed as a community that values open and deep conversations where individuals with diverse beliefs, including various interpretations of Christianity, or scripture, I would say, can discuss and explore ideas or tradition without the aim of winning debates or converting others. The discussions highlight the importance of understanding and empathy over doctrinal purity or ideological victory, suggesting a model of engagement that prioritizes relationship and genuine exploration of truth over adversarial debate. Excuse me. The transcript also touches on the challenges and dynamics of engaging with controversial or divisive topics, such as the inclusion of LGBTQ. I mean, we got into that the other day with Mark's question, I believe. LGBTQ individuals within Christian communities. The conversation acknowledges the existence of differing views and experiences, suggesting a nuanced approach that seeks to understand and respect individual journeys while grappling with the broader theological and societal implications. Overall, TLC appears to be envisioned as a space where dialogue, learning, and personal growth are encouraged, fostering a community that is open to exploring the complexities of faith, identity, and society in a community, in a respectful and thoughtful manner. And then it also just gives time stamps of all the different topics you talk about, which is really fascinating. So, I don't know. There's something, so that I would say is a good summary of what I see TLC as being. It's kind of related to my idea of having a local religious kind of AA group that operates really within kind of psychoanalytic principles of non-judgment that allows people to talk about their honest opinions, like a brave space where people can, like as Chezi says, where people can talk about what they can learn. There needs to be a hospitable space, a welcoming space that allows people to say what they think that they think so they can figure out what they really think. And not to, in a space that's open enough that allows people to express themselves so then they can think, when they know what they think, they can figure out what they maybe believe, which is how they're acting and manifesting in the world, because the body keeps the score. Your body is essentially your memory of what you believe. I think that's a good way to say it and think about it. So there's that. And then something else, the other topic that I want to bring in is Jason Almond-Tree Schweizer was messaging me about, I don't know, he was wanting to bring in Chezi, Yosef, maybe Jacob to talk about, he says one thing that's very fascinating to him, this was his main idea, is that with all the discussion of the meaning crisis and nihilism and what's going on in the world, intimacy crisis, shout out Mark Lefebvre, that no one talks about Ecclesiastes, because essentially that's what Ecclesiastes is, right? It's vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Who sent that to me in just a message a little bit ago? Because I messaged Paul Antleitner this morning. Paul, hey Paul, I don't know if you watch these, because Sam Tiedemann messaged me because Paul Antleitner which is related. I think this is in my video description. Paul Antleitner, what do you call it? Tweeted on X this little Joe Rogan clip. It's an actual video clip where Rogan says, what did he say? What was in the clip? He just had there was a screenshot that Sam messaged me, like, Joe Rogan, once a vocal evangelist of new atheist talking points on religion, now yearns for the, quote, just and righteous, end quote, kingdom of God, and believes the world, quote, needs Jesus for real. And then Jordan Peterson, quote, X'd that, whatever you say, and says, see you soon, Joe Rogan. So he must be going on Rogan again to talk about religion and Christianity, maybe, which will be fascinating because it's going to be on the tail end of this Symbolic World Conference, and Jordan Peterson is getting more and more specific and more nuanced views of his understanding of religion and Christianity. But then this is all related to what. So anyhow, I messaged Paul. I said like status rocket or something, and he hadn't checked Twitter or anything. And he was just like, and then he replied, interestingly, serendipitously, it's all connected, with vanity of vanities, Ecclesiastes. All is vanity, all is meaningless, all is able, I think is the Hebrew word, right? Jason likes to talk about. So, Christianity is, well, and the last piece I'll bring into this mosaic is my boy Cal, who I love deeply. I can't even actually talk about that much. I'll probably start crying. Which is weird, right? Like I'm gonna meet him in real life, but he's just a beautiful human being. And he was having a conversation with Wayne Fair of Sovereign Love, who's actually in here somewhere. Right here, my boy, Wayne. He has made everything beautiful in its time and has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Yeah. So Cal was on Wayne's, and they're going to start going through Jordan Daniel Wood's whole mystery of Christ. They started talking about it. This is stuff Cal and I think about all the time, like, because we're just obsessive, people that like Cal and I have had personal conversations that we're just like, what else is there to talk about besides theology? Like, I'm a little bit more. Cal actually has a great sense of humor, but I'm actually a little bit more playful. I like messing around. I like to bring in the levity. I like to play with like the Neils and the Chads and be silly. It's the unbearable lightness of being, but in that is this dual thing, gravity and levity. I mean, it's the crystal logic that Jordan Daniel Wood is talking about in Maximus. And Cal had these great quotes like, Maximus was Hegelian before Hegel existed. And it's true. There's a little bit of Hegel and Maximus. It's East meets West, and Christianity is kind of the thing of that. But I sent a message to Jason where I said, how does all this relate? Nihilism. Mitch Capps is in here. Christian nihilism. I'll drop your name too, Mitch. Meaning, the person being the nexus of meaning, but then also trampling down death by death. Death, the paradox, and the Tao, Christ the eternal Tao. The Taoism aspect, I don't know, because Vervaeke loves Taoism, but somehow has this problem with Christianity. But he has a problem with institutional Christianity. He has a problem with propositional, confessional Christianity. He doesn't have a problem with Christ, the eternal Tao. I don't think he has a problem with Christians that are actually embodying Christ to the world. He has a problem with earthly power structures that mammonistically use Christianity to exercise power over versus power for, which is authority. That's true power, versus false power, which is power over and against in a zero-sum competition thing. Jordan Hall and Vervaeke, everybody's been talking about these things. This is shit we've been talking about in this little corner amongst the randos, amongst the no ones, amongst those that don't have any status for over, I don't know, long time, 5 years, over 5 years. So Christianity, Peugeot's been talking about this. Christianity may have to die, but what is Christianity? I don't know. Christianity seems to me is probably it's the teachings of Christ as an ideology, maybe. But is that Christianity? No, because Christianity is fundamentally incarnational and about persons and about true belief, which is not just the ideas, not just the theory, not just the propositions, but it's those lived. The point is to live everything. It's the embodiment. Remember, embody. And so Christianity may have to die, which means Christianity has always been, this is what I said to my boys, Christianity has always been about martyrdom. Always. I mean, hello, look at Jesus Christ. What happened to him? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. True love is nothing more than this, than he laid down his life for his brothers. Now to quote some verses. I was talking with Yosef about this. This is the riff on POS and St. Paul. What you have to take, I am the chief of all sinners, along with other things that Paul said, like, I wish that I was accursed for the sake of my brethren. Moses in Exodus, right after the golden calf, said, cut me off for their sake. Abraham, I believe, did similar thing. It's interceding on behalf of others. Being a mediator is core to, I would argue, a lot of Judaism, but just like clearly and explicitly and fundamentally because of Jesus Christ. It's the most central thing is martyrdom, dying to yourself. And there are the white and there are the red martyrs. Some of the martyrdom is like dying for your faith explicitly, where people are just like, denounce Christ or I'll murder you. Okay, kill me then. Feeding them to the lions. Saint Irenaeus, right? I always mess that up. But like, forbid me not from living. Let me enter into the passion of my Lord as he's being taken to his death. Don't stop him. Jesus being led to the slaughter, quoting the Psalm, the lamb opens not its mouth as it's being led to the slaughter, not defending yourself necessarily. And what does it mean to really cut yourself off for the sake of your brethren? This is why I talk about Silence, the book Silence, Shizuko Endo and the Martin Scorsese film. What does faithfulness look like? It can look like almost everything because it's personal and it's going to differ from person to person. But it's going to involve, like John Baer says, it's a great quote from John Baer that Sherry likes to quote too, is the call of the Christian is to die. It's a call to die, to take up your cross out of love for the others. So like you can have the white martyrdom of dying for your family. And to bring Joe Rogan back in, this is a great Joe Rogan quote. When he was asked once about parenting, it's one of my favorite ones, is he said, let it change you. And I think what he means when he says, let it change you, is that you don't insist on your own way. You don't demand your own autonomy. You don't demand your own freedom. You don't sacrifice your children's becoming and their own freedom and their own maturity and growth for your own autonomous, selfish desires. You don't and anyone who's a good parent realizes that. And we all, everyone is to varying degrees. I'm not great at it all the time. And that isn't necessarily giving your kids all of what they want sometimes, because that can look like anything, right? You can sit there and argue with your kids. Let's just make it really practical instead of theoretical, right? Screen time. Screen time is a huge issue, and it's a hard thing to navigate in the modern world because here I am online making videos. I'm on my screen trying to keep up with the little corner and watch, listen to Rogan videos, listening to audiobooks. A lot of life has become on screen because of the internet, social media, and smartphones. And then I tell my kids, because of the danger of being in social media especially, but then also being on your phone all the time and having that curtail other developmental things like being bored, using your imagination, reading some, and what is better, and helping the kids to navigate that is a difficult thing. And so you can err in either way, right? You could insist on your own way and be like a strict disciplinarian, authoritarian father and just be like, no screens ever, and you don't get a phone, and you can't, and you could do that and then breed rebellion, and there's a passage in the New Testament that says fathers don't instigate and exacerbate your children with unnecessary, don't lord it over them. St. Paul says that true leadership isn't lording it over, against power over, because the person, we're not making identical replicants, we're making persons. And so to insist on your own way it's to not husband your children and garden them in a way to allow them to become the best version of who they're supposed to be, which isn't you. If you're trying to make them into you, you're going to kill them and kill yourself. And so you can err in that way, but then you can also err in the way of like, I don't want to have this battle every day. I don't want to constantly have this fight of arguing with you about how much screen time to have. So just do whatever you want. Here's a phone. Here's unlimited screen time. Eat whatever you want. Just completely give them over to themselves with no holding back, no tensions, no boundaries. Was that loving? No, that's not loving either. And so parenting is this constant navigating that and dying to yourself. And it's like, I don't know, for someone who's very sensitive and emotional, it's exhausting. For people that have like very low neuroticism and low agreeableness, like it's not that hard, but like navigating that tension is hard no matter what your temperament is. So anyhow, that's a practical dynamic of like, what does it mean to truly love? And I think that's to voluntarily give of yourself in a self-sacrificial way for the sake of the others. Because Christ and Antichrist, Christ in the New Testament is that which unites. It's like religio. It's the unity that holds things together. And Antichrist is that which divides. That's what causes schism. That which causes division. And this is why counterfeit, right? Christ and Antichrist. Antichrist looks like Christ, which is why it's deceptive. And so in the name of your, like, let's say, confessional purity of holding to the right theology, and if you have certain assumptions that, like, T. Grogan's in here, like a lot of fundamentalist rationalist Christians, you have to hold to these propositions or else you're not saved. If you don't self-identify with these ideas, then you're not a Christian. Well, This is the whole Jordan Peterson thing. What does it mean to believe? Belief isn't just thinky-talky, abstract ideas and self-identifying to those. Belief is also the embodiment of that reality in your person. You can believe that to have a certain diet and to eat a certain way and to exercise a certain way and even to buy certain exercise equipment is the way to be healthy and eat the right vitamins and drink the right liquids and go to bed on the right time and do all these things, right, to have a healthy body. You can think all those things and self-identify with them and be like, all those things are true. But if you don't do it, you don't have a healthy body. If you don't actually embody it, and your body is the memory of its potency and act, those things together, integrated with honesty, where there's no double-mindedness, that is actual belief. It's doing the things. So sit there and profess all day what you believe. It doesn't matter until you do it. Faith without works is dead. All right. And I think this is the last thing with Moses, in with Paul, in with Christ, in with the martyrs and the saints that have come before, Saint Teresa. The true believers in Christianity are those that sacrifice themselves for their children, and not just for those that they love, because the New Testament also says that, like, what benefit is you if you like sacrifice for those you love? Like, everybody does that. Everybody gives up. What Christians are called to do it for their enemies. The Beatitudes. Blessed are those who revile you and persecute you for my name's sake. All right, I'm gonna go look through some of the comments. Hezi, my boy, is here, I see. Let's go read through some of these things. How far back? Okay, Ignatius is a fake martyr and a forged text. Yeah, I don't know. The historical critical analysis of all that kind of stuff, I don't care that much about. There's certain things I'm going to take on faith, as you do, because you're trusting whoever said that it's a forged text. I mean, I doubt you're an expert in it. So, like, I don't. What up, Gavin? Thank you for doing the AI stuff for me, so I didn't have to sacrifice my soul to the god of AI.
Thank you for asking for help. I enjoy doing it. I'm the guy who likes to sit by the fire and tend the fire.
Look at this guy. We are blessed with the presence of a certain Mitchell.
Hey guys.
Mitchell, where are you at? You're in. I hear some background noise, some music.
Yeah, Panera okay. Coffee.
It's all right.
Sorry. Nice.
Okay, you can silence yourself unless you have something to say. It's some great elevator music. Here, I'm looking at your comments. You can just tell me what your comments are.
Well, yeah, I'll try, because I always have this conversation with Jason, and it's very tough, and maybe you can really just help me try to understand why I keep coming down where I'm coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know this situation with Moses is I read it very, very differently than Jason and maybe you, because he says, well, he comes down and sees this event happening with the calf, and he smashes the tablets, and he separate everybody out and say, hey, if you're with the Lord, come out here and kill your brother. And then that big event happens. Hey, Jason. And then he says, I'll go see if I can make atonement for you. And he goes up onto the mountain, and he entreats the Lord to, spare them and have mercy on them. And if not, if he's going to blot them out, to just blot him out too. And then the Lord says, well, whoever sinned against me, I'll blot out of my book, which I took to mean, I may have been wrong to take it to mean this, but I took it to mean you are going to be blotted out of my book as well for your sin against me. He's by no means going to spare the guilty. And then there's this plague that happens. Okay, so we fast forward to Christ, and he is able to make atonement, and because he is the spotless lamb, he will not be blotted out of his book because he has not sinned against God. And then you have Paul later in the same kind of vein saying, well, I would wish that I could be accursed, separated from Christ, if it would help, which it wouldn't, because he's not Christ. And so the thing that I keep coming down on, I think where I'm trying to get at is the particularity of Jesus. And I know that we talk about around here a lot theosis, and that there's a sense in which we are Christ, and he is us. But I always want to highlight his particularity and his specificity, and how he is singular and did something that no one before or after him could do. And I know there's the kind of problem with, well, we are to imitate him. And even in that, I think, and Cal and I have talked about this a lot, because he doesn't see, I hate to speak for Cal because I'll just mess it up, but he doesn't see that God has a different set of moral guidelines than we would. But he just is, and he just behaves. And I think that there are commandments that are offered to us that are in light of our limitations, in light of our not godness. And so I do see that even in our efforts to imitate Christ, that we should still be aware of and talk about as a means of worship the profound differences between God and ourselves, and Christ and ourselves. And so maybe you can help me. Why do you think that I keep wanting to come back to that specificity and particularity, and wanting to differentiate what Jesus did from what Moses did, or what Jesus did and what Paul did, and what Jesus did and what we do?
So, couple things. Fleva says, once again, Mitch proving he's the coolest guy here. And then Hezi says, Moses is the correction of Noah, who only thought of his family but didn't fight for the world. Why do I think that you... I don't know. I think I was actually having a private conversation with Hezi a little bit about this yesterday, because I am also very insistent on the particularity of Jesus in a lot of ways. Like I think that's the one, the particularity of the historic person Jesus Christ and what he was, to me, is unique amongst all the world religions. So like, because Jordan Hall had this conversation with Vervaeke, which was great, and Vervaeke wants to keep talking about, like, Taoism or Sufism or all these other mystical traditions. They have all these similar things to mystical Christianity, which is true, except the physical incarnation of the fullness of the unincarnate God in Jesus Christ. Like, that is something that's completely unique to Christianity. And that's a very, like, what that means and what that is, that's all these Trinitarian conversations. That's a very complicated discussion. But yet it's, I don't know how to talk about it in ways that aren't simple. Like I can point people to resources. This is why Cal is having that conversation about the whole mystery of Christ and talking about Maximus and Jordan Daniel Wood and saying Maximus was Hegel before Hegel, because it really is. This is what I'm trying to get at, is the Christologic that Jordan Daniel Wood is talking about, and who Christ is as the fullness of the icon of the invisible God and the first fruits of the new creation, is not an either or thing. To play the either or game of he's either a human being and he's not God, or he's God and he's not human, is to miss the point. He's both of those things. And there's an intra-Christian debate about that, between, like, this is what the whole debate of Chalcedon was about, between, like, the human nature and the God nature, and how those two things are connected or not connected. That's what that whole thing was about. and it's still, and there was like the first schism of the church between the Oriental Orthodox and the unified church, right? And even to this day, they are technically kind of out of like the Oriental Orthodox or the Coptics, they're out of communion kind of with the Orthodox Church and with the Catholics, but and it's just a slow reintegration because I don't know. There's a thing I could send you. It's from like the 70s. This little, I can't remember where it is, somewhere on my phone, but it's essentially like they're saying I think the disagreement that we were having about these things is semantic, and so to say to bring it all back, I think why you struggle with this issue is the same reason why anyone struggles with this issue, and why our monotheistic friends that don't acknowledge the Trinity, like Sam or like Hezi, when I'm having these conversations, it's the hardest issue in the world to talk about, as far as I'm concerned, in an abstract way, because it's very esoteric. But I think it's something that's so close to you. This is why I like to talk about fish not knowing they're wet. It's so intimately real to you that in an unarticulable way, in an embodied way, when we love people, we know this so intimately, it's closer to you than the air you're breathing. And this is why I say, like, I'm not worried about the technical disagreements that I have with Sam or with Hezi, and why I'd want to go to church with Sam, because to divide over the differences in our ideas that neither of us understand, to me, is silly beyond belief. But I can't, but I also can't in my own
You call
pride.
that the antichrist, right?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, to divide over such things would be the antichrist within us.
Yes, and I think Christianity is moving toward this is kind of my whole thing, is like one of the most Christian things you could do is die to your own ideas for the sake of the other. And that doesn't mean it's unimportant. Like I know you have a hard time with this issue. It's not to say that you die to your own conviction. It's just you prioritize the relationship over the abstraction, which is what TLC is all about. Because I feel like the rest of the world is doing the opposite.
I'm not fully there. I see that we have to unite around our conscience to a certain extent, and I see that there are differences in conscience that aren't necessarily threatening. And of course, we do create these hierarchies of importance, when it comes to our disagreements. And we do say, I don't think we can get around saying, well, there's a certain threshold of disagreement where the relationship becomes untenable. I don't see that as anti-Christian to divide over some things. I mean, I think probably should be a lot higher threshold than most people are willing to give themselves to. But
Well, I think yeah, I think it's, and Gavin or Bad Comedy, if you have thoughts, jump into. I think it's difficult because it's like this is where technology and the medium and how we're having these conversations is, I don't know, is really connected and integral to this whole conversation. Because like if you really think about it historically, I don't know, I think prior to the Enlightenment, and you can, some of this stuff was happening in the councils, like Sam will point to this, people are dividing over ideas. But I really think, in my understanding of the evolution of consciousness, I think a lot of that had to do with tribal and ethnic identity, and the means by which they made those tribal identitarian lines was maybe a little bit around ideas, but now that has become the way that we divide now. People don't divide really over race or ethnicity anymore, because we're so far into the Enlightenment, into like the American way of thinking, where like, again, it's the idea of what is America and what are we united over? Ideas. I mean, that's the thing. Like we unite over the the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Abstractions is what we unite over, and behaving in a certain way, completely devoid of gender, race, all these different things, right? And so those have become the dividing lines. And because of technology now, we've made these moves from ethnic tribal identity to national identity, and now to just straight identitarianism, because this is what I mean by confessionalism, is like if you live in a big city and you have a buffet of choices of church that you can go to, you're no longer going to a parish local church because these are the people that you live with. You go and find the church that most associates with your ideas and with your abstractions and the proper statement of faith, and then you go to church way over there. But then what happens?
Go ahead,
Huh?
sorry.
But then what happens if you like change and evolve and your ideas change? This is like what I was saying the day I left evangelicalism, when I was talking to Pete Enns. Then whenever anybody changes and isn't married to their ideas and grows and evolves, they have to break community with the group they're in, because that's what the community is based in. Just the ideas, just the propositions. There's nothing else tethering them.
Well, I do think people, when they tie themselves to a community, are usually always, having to sacrifice something of their own ideas. But it would seem like a misstep to just unite yourself to someone you didn't agree with, because you're in this subjective cage, and you have to decide things on your own ultimately. But usually you're deciding who you want to submit yourself to, and once you've done that, usually, I mean, you can bounce anytime you want technically, but most people, when they tie themselves to, say, a church, they say, well, yeah, I mean, this isn't exactly how I would do it, but I will submit to the pastorate. I will submit to the body here. I think there's some level of that always going on, even though, yes, you are selecting who you're going to submit yourself to, ultimately. So, I mean, you're not going to get away from the subjectivity or the...
I hear some idolatry. Like, are you submitting to Christ, or are you submitting to your church or your pastor, your nation? It's like,
Well,
there's some tension.
Pretty big authority pipeline. I mean, if you just look to Scripture, I mean, there are all these kind of like, slaves submit to your masters, children submit to your parents, wives submit to your husbands, citizens submit to your government. There are all these pipelines, but they're a way of submitting to Christ, and it requires a serious amount of trust in Christ to submit yourself to some of these powers, to say, yeah, that person may not even have my best interest in mind. I mean, to submit yourself to these authority pipelines, I think it's trusting the head over all of that.
I saw a Milgram experiment and an Ash conformity experiment. I'm just saying.
I want to bring in, do you guys know, are you familiar with the idea of luxury beliefs?
Yes.
Okay. So
Great concept.
Yeah. So like the easiest example of luxury beliefs are, I mean, I can't remember who coined the idea. I saw some podcasts with them a while ago, but it's essentially like a belief that you can hold basically in theory, and you can self-identify with it because it doesn't cost you anything and it costs other people something. I think a lot
like defund the police.
Yes, defund the police is like the prime example, that like rich, affluent people who live in gated communities can just be like, defund the police, because they can hire private security if need be, or because they live away from places that defunding the police actually affects. Somebody used this example recently. I think who's that cat? He was talking to Eric Weinstein about it recently. He's become really, Chris Williamson was talking about it, where
Yep.
he said, if you really look at the statistics recently of how many more like black people have been shot by police, if you really look at the data since defund the police, like, it's not good. Like, things have gotten worse. And so, like, has defund the police actually helped people? I think a lot of times a lot of self-identifying with certain propositional structures within Christianity is a luxury belief. And the reason I'll say that is because, like, you can do that because you're in a predominantly Christian society and because you have this plethora of options. But what happens when you go to, like, I don't know, some non-Christian country where Christianity is under persecution? How much do those, particular beliefs matter? Almost nil.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a good, it's kind of off topic, but the idea of luxury beliefs is a great example of how when you name something, it takes so much of its power away, because what luxury beliefs are is they're beliefs that grant social status to a certain group of people by believing in them. Like, oh, I'm so noble, I want to defund the police. But
Yeah.
as soon as you have the name and the concept luxury beliefs, it flips it on its head, because now those don't give you status.
Exactly.
Now they're luxury beliefs that take status away from you.
Yeah.
So
it's like virtue
once you have the
signaling.
demon's name, you kill it. It's so
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, totally. It's like virtue signaling. I would argue that a lot of confessionalism has been virtue signaling.
Yeah.
We are over here in team right, you know. And I actually just don't think that in a enacted, embodied way, that's just not a very Christian thing. And this gets into the whole dying to your beliefs, Christianity dying thing, you know. Jason, I know you got good thoughts about this. What do you think?
I don't. I was trying to get in here, and well, I don't even know what we're talking about, because I was trying to get in here because I saw Mitch was in here, and I wanted to just join. But then I'm driving out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and I lose service. It's always something every time you're doing a stream, man. I don't know.
I know.
So
You were
what
making
was
me
Mitch
anxious
talking
the way
about?
you were playing with your phone and driving. I was like, oh
I
no.
know. I was trying to find a spot to put it, and then and then I tried to pull off, and then as soon as I pulled off in a gas station, then I lost service completely, and so I was like, what the heck? So I was like, I'll just keep driving and listening, and then I got to a town, so I was like, I'll pull off again, and now I don't know where the conversation is. So sorry.
So we're talking about real belief and thinking, and potentially confessionalism being a form of luxury beliefs. If you're familiar with the idea of luxury beliefs, where like they're things that you say that you believe that don't really cost you anything, but they'll cost other people to live that way, which like one of them is a good example is defund the police, where like a lot of the people that are so pro defund the police are people who the effects of that don't affect them at all. They're just like outside and above it. And I know here, respond to this. So T. Grogan's quoting, like, there are false prophets among the people, and there'll be false teachers, secretly inducing destructive heresies, denying the sovereign Lord who bought them. So, yes, I think, however, T. Grogan, you're meaning that in a propositional way, because this is why we say all the time, what is heresy and what is Christ and antichrist? And really, Christ is that which unites. So if you think of a body, like a church being a body, what actually divides it? If you divide over ideas and you call that Christ, you call that fidelity to Christ, but it's dividing the church, is it Christ? That's fundamentally what in the real world, not the theoretical abstract world, that is technically antichrist. Technically.
Just that which divides, or
yes.
Really? Okay. I don't know. I was thinking it because I sent you the video. I'm sure you haven't gotten to it because I sent it probably right before you started this. But I was listening to a video Cal sent me. It was Peter Hyatt, and he's basically, I would describe him as universalist, and he's so articulate and just compelling, where it just makes too much sense to me sometimes. And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, this almost is just like just too easy the way he's presenting it. And so part of me makes me think, and I was kind of wondering if that's what Mitch was bringing up. Is there a fear of losing the distinction in the particularity? Because just naming something is dividing, right? But that's not evil in and of itself. Because when you name something, you kind of divide it from the rest.
It is evil.
It is evil to
Naming something?
But Adam gave names. So like if you call,
he was good until his wife came to disagree with him. Then they were
I don't think the thing is, I don't think naming is bad as if you have a wife, because you give that name to her womb and then it germinates and creates something new.
What if
but
I don't disagreement?
It's just really powerful. I don't think it's good or bad, right? Naming is just really, really powerful. You have to be
but
careful.
that seems like to me like it almost is dividing and making distinctions, because if you say this is a dog, then it's not a cat. And so you're dividing right then, but you're giving something its particularity. So when Mitch was saying, like, talking about Jesus earlier, and I missed like half of it, but I was wondering if he was getting at, if you say Moses is Jesus, then you miss.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Hilarious.
Perfect. Mitch comes back. Jason disappears.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I just hung up on my dad. He was trying to call me, so I said, "Get out of here."
Okay, so I want to read. He
one
of
won't
my-
ever watch this, so don't worry.
Dividing.
Someone send him the link.
I want to read one of my favorite passages that I think is related to this. So this is 1 Corinthians 11, 17 through 19, I think. So he's giving instructions about head coverings and things like that. So then St. Paul says, but in giving this instruction, I do not praise you because you come together not for better, but for the worse. For in the first place, when you come together as a church, I hear that divisions exist among you. And in part, I believe it. For there must also be factions among you, so that those who are approved may become evident among you. Therefore, when you meet together, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in the eating, one takes his... So, like, he goes on to talk about eating the Lord's Supper, and because some people were eating before other people showed up. And so he's saying your eating or not eating isn't for unity. It's just for your own personal gain. But what he's saying, there's these two words. There's divisions, and then there's factions. He says explicitly, like, let me try to get the Greek here. But they're two different words. So like one of them is essentially one means like the division is translated as schism. Schisma is the Greek word. And he's just like, that's the bad thing. But then he said, but there must be factions among you, which is like, it could be translated. It's, I don't know the Greek. Heresis, so like to capture or choosing or choice. So essentially what he's saying is like there has to be differences of opinion. Of course there has to be, or else like what are you choosing between?
Yeah,
there's nothing. You can't. There can be no discernment, but you shouldn't be schisming.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's kind of a tricky thing too, because I mean, when you're talking about that, I'm thinking about where he says, is Christ divided and we're all of one body? And so if you can't say to the hand, is this not of the body? So just like where I would say dog, it's like you get to a point where you're like, you ask the question, is this not of creation? Because it almost feels like you're dividing and cutting off when you do that, because you name something and you're like, this is a dog, and so you're separating it. And like if I were to take like my liver out or something, it's like you take that out and you're like, this is a liver, and you could forget it's part of the body and it needs to be in the whole of creation.
You can also bring things together by naming them, though, because what if you call it man's best friend? Now you're connecting the dog to humanity, right?
Yeah. So
it's just
everything
powerful.
is interconnected and everything's part of the body. So that's a good point to bring up the difference between division and like just making and factions and distinctions, and that everything is still interconnected. So how does this, Mitch, how does this tie into what you were saying? What were you saying exactly? I missed your point, because you brought up the passage in Moses. We duke it out over.
Yeah, it's nothing you haven't heard before. Yeah, I was just trying to think out loud about why I wanted to distinguish Jesus from Moses and Paul and us.
Can I bring up a point? Because I left it in the comment section and I said, I still feel this way, that I think universalism and Calvinism has to be married together. Like, I don't think one works without the other. And in Calvinism, it seems to me like a lot of the main points are like something like, not my will, but your will be done, Father. And then there's also the idea of even predestination or choosing. And it's like, I don't think those things should be thrown out entirely. Like, that's what I'm trying to wrestle with, because I feel like that's kind of something what you're getting at. Like, Christ said, many are called, but few are chosen. Right. And that doesn't mean that all are, that like the ones that aren't chosen are damned, but you can be chosen for, like, if you're elected, like if the elected offices, those people are chosen because we see them more qualified, more responsible. So where you would want to place Christ at the top, it's like is that what you're kind of getting at? He needs
chosen
to be chosen
for, not chosen against.
Yeah. But is that what you're getting at? Like, we would lose that if, or something like that? Like, that you want that Christ has to be the head still, I guess? I'm kind of, maybe I'm getting lost.
Well, it's not obvious to me what we would lose. I just have a sense of distinctions being made, and I think that those distinctions are valuable, and I don't think that the tension or the coexistence of opposites should prevent us from saying things.
So I agree with you. I'll pop in. I want you guys to keep fleshing it out, but like, so T. Grogan says creeds are antichrist, gospel according to me. So no. We tried to have this conversation on Grail Country with Jordan Daniel Wood at one point in there. Nate, God bless him, was just I wasn't talking a lot, and he was trying to promote all my things in that conversation. But this is the distinction that I would put between, and I've talked about this before, but like between what I call a creed and a confession. So a creed, traditionally, the word creed, it just means like what we call it even in the liturgy, when we say the Nicene Creed, it's the symbol of the faith. And a symbol is an antinomy. It's a Tao of like two opposing things. So it's the transcendent and the immanent, both things at once. A symbol unites heaven and earth. And so it's like a human being is a symbol, an icon. It's a physical material thing with the breath of God. So like we have a body, but we also have a mind. It's a union of both of those things. And so a creed is something that is not merely, it's dynamic. It's fundamentally dynamic. It's not a static thing. Whereas I would say a confession by its nature is a static thing that is meant to bound and exclude in an either or way. A creed does not do that. A creed is a spiral. So no, I think that's a straw man.
Can we get someone to support Antichrist in here? No? Even though Antichrist is in every single human being who's ever lived and ever will live, and God put him there? Like
I'll steal man some Antichrist.
Okay.
Do it, Lucifer.
Well, this is one of my Lukeisms, is Christ plays an Antichrist. This to me is a fundamental it's a fundamental part of reality and this is why this is the myth of heaven or the new creation, the new earth and resurrection as the lackless being. This is very Peter Rawlian stuff, because it's the idea of like sitting, the non-dynamic, non-compelling idea of sitting in heaven and angels playing harps with the sufferingless idea of like a static, unbecoming, unevolving heaven. Why no one finds that compelling is because Christ was made perfect. Christ was made perfect by what he suffered, and he grew in stature and wisdom. Jesus Christ, the full perfect image of God, had a process and a dynamic, and this is why suffering is intrinsic to Christianity. But suffering, like I didn't know this the other day till Jordan Hall said it. It just means to undergo. Like that's what it means in the Greek. It's just to undergo. So like the caterpillar to become the butterfly undergoes its transformation, its sanctification, its theosis. You're not going to get that without the dynamic of Christ and Antichrist, falls, schisms, bad, sin. I mean, I just don't. This is why bad is not ultimately bad. I'm not truly, in the end, a dualist, and I'm not going to put a hard line between good and bad. Or chaos is bad. It's just unordered. It's just order you don't see yet.
I like the approach in Genesis 1 of saying good, not good, and very good.
Yes. Yeah. No.
And all of it together is very good, including the not good. Like the good and the not good together creates a very good.
That's a very, I would say that's a classic understanding of the good and evil, but it's also very Jewish. The kind of hard dualistic separation between those things evolved in certain strains of Christianity that I don't. Yeah, exactly this.
And doesn't bad sort of purify good? Like I kind of see T. Grogan playing that role, where he's so. Jordan Peterson talks about the flaming sword that cuts away at the parts of you that need to be left behind?
My feeling is this is maybe the wrong way to talk about it. My feeling is, this is my feeling,
Yeah.
that dualism is actually the best way to talk about it. Even though that philosophically it's going to reach a dead end, like in the day-to-day, it's the best way to talk about it. That's why I don't have any problem saying suffering is bad, death is bad. Yes, I get all the ways that these are ultimately being used towards some greater good, some very good, but I think it's inappropriate to talk about them as good. I think there's a little bit of nonsense to that. Cal gave me a great turn of phrase that I love. He said, and I think he was just steelmanning me, being nice to me, but he spoke about having operative limitations to your theology, and I think it's very important. I think that's a reverent way to go about things. We don't want to call what God calls bad good. We don't want to call what God calls evil good, out of reverence to him. And it doesn't mean that we can't find a place philosophically where it kind of checks out in a weird way. But I think it's just I think dualistic talking is a humble way of talking about things. And I get that it can put a person on a high horse where they feel like they have the black and white answers, but I still think it's the right tool to use, even though it can be wielded poorly.
My thoughts. Let's see. My thoughts of that. Well, I was first thinking about there's the different ways of talking about things. To back up Mitch's point, I'm thinking maybe at least in terms of children, I feel like a lot of times you want to give them very, very black and white, simplistic ways of dealing with the world. I don't know how helpful that is. It just seems like that's the way. I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't know, but it seems like that's the way of.
It's helpful
Dealing
for a
with things.
time. It's helpful for a time. Like I say about my son, don't hit your sister.
Yeah.
And he obeys that rule because I'm his father, and he has a certain respect or fear for me. And it's like, and he doesn't give in to his passions, just his instinct, his automatic animalistic response. But then I've often said, if he's 25 and the reason he's not hitting his sister is because daddy said so, I'm a failure as a parent.
Yeah. So so maybe maybe you can tie this in a little better, because when Mitch was first talking, my thought was the speaking dualistically about things is very, it seems like that's what we're always doing in these conversations most of the time, and it's very mathematical and very precise. We're using precision in our language. Like I feel like maybe Vervaeke does that a lot. But then what first came to my mind was that the difference between doing that and then speaking in parables. So I'm like, I can either speak dualistically and very precise, or I can just speak in parables. And I'm like, is it better to just speak in parables? Because it says that Jesus spoke all things in parables. God speaks everything in parables, like in terms of narrative and just creation around us. Like, should I just speak poetically? Because then it's lost on. I feel like that isn't like, maybe, I don't know. Because then why are we doing this? And why not just everybody speak in their own weird.
You have to go over to the Griswold Grimm channel if you want to just interact in parables.
Yeah.
And it's a great place. I'm promoting it.
Yeah, but I think that maybe gets to what Luke was getting at, though. Like, there's one thing, I don't know why this always stood out to me in the scriptures, when it says they wrote over Jesus' name, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews," and they wrote it in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And I've always thought Hebrew is way more poetic and almost parabolic in a way. And Greek seems way more precise and dualistic. And I feel like they're both
evolution
needed.
of language too, man. Like, it isn't arbitrary that lopsided, left-brained, mechanistic thinking evolved in a language that was predominantly like English. McLuhan talks about this stuff all the time. Like, these things aren't arbitrary. You go back to like the development of phonetic language with the Phoenicians, who were traders, and so like McLuhan talks about this. See, and this is what's hard is like, I barely understand this. I don't think most people understand what the hell I'm about to say. So like, what good does it do? But like, McLuhan,
I already know what you're about to say.
You do. Well, we probably do.
Nice.
You've heard me say it before. But McLuhan talks about how certain languages, there's this union between like the thing in the world, the ground, and then the symbol, that represents that ground. They're fundamentally symbolic languages. So like if you look at Chinese or Japanese or something, they're actually symbolic, and they're connected, and they're combinations of different symbols, but like the whole thing is fundamentally symbolic, which makes your brain work in certain ways. And so that language is fundamentally connected in a way that English isn't, because like you make this is why it's spelling and magic. You make like the letter A and a combination with like Apple, APPLE. Those specific things are just related to sounds. They have no connection. Like the word apple, if you write apple, has zero connection symbolically. It's a mere sign as a pointer. This means this. This means apple. But there's no actual connection anymore. And when you grow up with a language linguistically like that, you're thinking in merely sign ways. You're not thinking in symbolic ways, which is why no one understood Jonathan Peugeot for such a long time.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't.
Yeah.
And so part of this is the difficulty with that is this is why I say like AI, this is the thing with like, is AI good or bad? The Chinese farmer, this is where I'll take that. AI, you could say AI is going to destroy the world. Maybe it will. I don't know. But it also could save the world, because what it's going to do is it's going to take over everything that a machine does and do it way better than human beings do. But human beings have been turning ourselves into machines in very static ways for a long time. You know, like there was I hope this all makes sense. Paul, I think this is still in a members only thing. I can't remember the guy he was talking to, so I won't talk about it a lot. I don't even know his name anyhow. But Paul was talking to this very successful British businessman who's now become this consultant who I think he's very successful financially and professionally. And he comes and consults for all these companies. And he said, when he started getting into these major board meetings, he thought he was going to start talking to people who just like, essentially he thought these were going to be like the big shooters, the high rollers, very competent people. And he's like, they're not. A lot of these people have no idea what's going on. And he's like, that's why they hire consultants to come in, because they've been so trained by the systems and the corporation and the way that it works that essentially they've become machines that can't see outside of their own system, which is why they have to hire consultants from outside to fix their problems, because they're just thinking in these binary ways that can't get outside the closed circle of the serpent. And so that's why they hire consultants to come in and just be like, what the fuck are you doing?
It's like we're all swimming in the water, but it's like a different kind of water. Some of it's similar, some of it's different. Like we go and we learn math, we learn science, we take multiple choice tests, but that has done a number on us. Like that's the reason you'll end up with people who don't like the Trinity. That's like the Trinity for someone who does math. The Trinity makes no sense. It's idiotic, right?
Well,
if you've
logic,
been trained in math,
you'll never understand it with either or logic.
Right. The Trinity makes no sense in that frame of mind.
The problem is people that are still using logical thinking say that. Like, that's the problem.
No, they do, but that's because
I heard that my whole life, and it's like, and then you ask them to explain it, and they just tried it. Then it's just heresy immediately, because that's what's frustrating about it, I think, for most people.
But that's because they're trapped in this confessional logic of like the Trinity is good, not Trinity is bad. This is the good, right thing, and so I have to affirm that. But then it's like, explain it with logic. Well, I can't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like they'll say they're I understand the frustration, because I felt like it took me years to just finally crack that open. And then it was actually Mitch. We set the flowers on fire at Craig's wedding, because I was on an extended fast and talking to him about shapes, where I was finally figuring out the Trinity. And he was like, "You're making no sense." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, because I'm on a fast and I'm seeing things in symbols, and it just doesn't make any sense to anyone else."
But this is why psychedelics, right? Like psychedelics or near-death experiences or dreams or visions free people from this trap all the time, because none of that operates in these binaries.
Yeah.
None of it. Dream logic is not logic.
Yeah.
But that's much more real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we tie this back in to Mitch's whole point? I was trying to think about that a little bit too. Like, I feel like when you're talking about the symbol and the symbols in language, if you think of Christ, is Christ the symbol?
I went off the rails. This is Steel Manning the binary.
Mhm.
and the is because you might have to follow. I think most Western people will, especially if they're intellectually inclined. You're going to have to follow the logic all the way down to its death, which will be like an existential death for you if you're ever going to come out on the other side of it. That's part of your necessary suffering. If you are trapped in the closed circle, the Ouroboros of logic, you're going to, like T-Grog, you're going to have to follow that sumbitch all the way down
The spiral's
into
going down now.
into existential death before you come out on the other side of the resurrection, realizing that you can't think your way out of a prison made of
And you
thought.
don't want to throw away logic either. You don't come out of it saying logic's shit. You know.
No, because then
logic's
you're
super
still
valuable.
in it. You're still in it, not thinking you're in it.
No, logic is super valuable. It's just there's other super valuable things besides logic.
Yeah, but a lot of the times, the thing with things besides logic is you can't will on them. You can't actually do anything with them.
No.
They can be offered to you and are, but you can't. The way that you're able to operate is in the logic prison. Try saying anything without a deference to logic. Try saying anything without dualism, and that's okay. The truth is not most realized in logic, and by God's grace, we are not always operating in logic, but that's by God's grace, and that's not something that we really will upon. And so I do think, everything is meaningless. Now fear the Lord and keep his commandments. That's the thing. You are going to hit those. The intellectually honest person is always going to enter into the existential tailspin. And what are they going to be left with? They're going to be left to defer to the ultimate perspective. So that's Christian nihilism, I guess.
Humility.
I love that phrase, existential tailspin, if I could say it, but it's a good one.
It's good.
My thought when you were talking about you can't act without thinking or entering into that logic realm, I was just going to ask the question, what about divorce? Because that seems like a very dualistic decision that sometimes I guess you could argue has to be made, but then it's quoted, because of the hardness of your hearts, you were permitted this. So what do you think about that? Because that seems like entering into the
I just want to throw in one word: dance. Like dance is a way of acting. So I just want to toss that in there too.
That's good. Yeah, songs always remind me of dancing, but
Jason, I'm not sure. I'm trying to bridge the gap between what I was saying in the case you're bringing up.
I'm not sure either. That's why I asked the question. Because I feel like there are. I was trying to, go along with the point you were making, Mitch, and I feel like there are, because I've heard you make that point before, where like sometimes you just have to act, and I feel like there are these moments in life where the waiting, where it feels like a black and white decision, and you're presented that before you, and you're like, it's like a crossroads. Like you come to crossroads in your life, and I think maybe a lot of times, this is where I was wondering, like, and divorce would be one of those. It's like, what if your husband's abusive to, like, your children or something like that, and it's not even to you, because you could say like,
that's a black decision. That's not even black and white. It's like black and white.
I think
no.
If
it's you could, because if it's you and your husband, like I've heard plenty of stories where like the wife will suffer through it, like the husband may be abusing her and she'll just stay with it and love the husband, and it changes. Eventually he falls on his knees and breaks in repentance, and they have this beautiful marriage afterwards. But then what if it's not the wife and it's the kids? And then it's like, should the wife then divorce the husband and leave with the kids? And it has nothing to do with sexual immorality. And that's what I mean, is like I know you said black and black, and I get that point, but I mean it's not like one is, I think that's what I was
white
trying to
and
say.
White. Let's not be racist.
Let's just say it's a crossroads. It's not
That's
black
fine.
and white. It's just a crossroads. Here's the decision. You got to go right or left. Yeah. And it's like,
I think
neither one's black or white. Neither one's good or evil. It's just like, I don't know. But it has to be a logical.
Well, I believe one of the things that this is bringing out is when we sometimes buck up against creedal thinking or confessional thinking, we always say, well, what about? And the thing about the whatabouts is those happen in community. All meaning is relational, all meaning is personal. These things happen in community. So you have the creed, but and you don't sacrifice that. It's truth and mercy. But when you're actually having to make real life decisions, they don't look like the rule, or they're much more specific than the rule. And so you're down there at the level of behavior, having to parse through some of that. The creeds and confessions are helping you to parse through that. But it's got to trickle down to where when you're actually making decisions in real life and when you're actually confronting situations that aren't clean cut, then you're doing that in community out of deference to each other, without a retreat into private interpretations and total prostration to the Holy Spirit to help you do this. And that doesn't mean that you're going to do it exactly right. And in fact, you're not, but you're still going to have to get up and continue to do it. And I think that those creeds and confessions help and don't hurt in the end.
So
They do hurt.
they hurt and they help, because this is where I'll steelman you, where I've said before, I don't think the vanguard of the evolution of Christianity or consciousness is really, it's not in this binary either or way where it's in the East. And like, just if everybody would convert to Orthodoxy, then just, man, that would be, we'd all be fixed. And why I said, like, I'm super happy Nick freewheeling didn't convert, because to your point, the creeds and confessions, they are divisive. This is what I would say. This is kind of a conversation I was trying to have with Kenzie the other day, is that Christ is the exclusive inclusivist, the particular, in the same way that Israel is the exclusive inclusivist group. Israel is like group salvation, but not just in spite of everything else, for the sake of the world. Jesus Christ is particular, personal, individual salvation, but not just for him, for the sake of the world, for the life of the world. So then that fractally radiates out. But I think we needed to go down this path of Christian nihilism, conflating thinking and belief. What do I really think? How does it relate to this group identity versus what do I think about that? I think we had to go down this path of isolated, autonomous, individual nihilism, depression. I'm on, addicted to oxy. We had to do all this, and suicidal, because what I actually think about stuff matters. It does matter. Mm-hmm. This is where I'll affirm you completely. But part of the problem with that is, like, you're not actually going to know what you think about things until you're integrated, until you don't lie, especially to yourself. Because we all bullshit ourselves and lie to ourselves all the time, which is why we go to psychoanalysts and therapists. And this is why I think TLC is important, is because this is a space where people are allowed to talk out loud, outside of confessional boundaries, and think out loud so that they can figure out what they actually think about things, so then that we can believe fully and embody. That's what I think is going on.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think the interesting place where you and I diverge, and I like the group diary, the group out loud rough draft of personal beliefs and everything. I think that the end goal needs to be I'm going to use the word objective, to arrive to an objective truth, to arrive to an ideal together. And it's why I don't have any problem with a conversion mentality point blank, like on its face. I think it's loving to convert people to your ideas lovingly. And that might be a point of divergence for you and I, at least listening to you the past couple of days.
I mean, I think I've just gotten to the point where I don't even know how to talk about it. I mean, it's both end. Like, obviously I think my ideas and I talk about my ideas, and as much as I'm honest, like, all the stuff that I'm saying is, in as much as I'm not self-deluded, I think I believe, and I think it's right. But no matter what, I can't make anyone believe those things. And it's very much like the Jordan Peterson thing. And then even if it's the take the log out of your own eye. Even if I'm right about it, cool, and you can adopt it if you want to. But the thing is, like, you can't. How did Jordan Hall say that the other day? You can't ever. It's not true belief is never coercive. I mean, you can't, because, like, if you don't truly believe it in an integrated way, in an honest way within yourself, it doesn't matter if you adopt my ideas because you don't really believe them. It's all fake anyhow.
But you can make someone believe things, and you have made people believe things. And to the extent that those things were good, that was good. And to the extent that they were
only in a symbiotic, synergistic way. What I'm saying is, like, I can't, if they are not cooperating with whatever I'm saying, and it's compelling to them, I can't make them believe it.
Yeah, there's a way, I feel like, I don't know, just from knowing you for a short time, Luke, I don't think you've really ever intellectually or logically convinced someone of anything. Like, that's why people are always like, he's speaking out of two sides of his mouth, and you're like, just get to know me. Because once people get to know you and they interact with you on a personal level and come into a relationship with you, then I think the things you're saying open up and they more blossom. And it's not like some intellectual rigor that you're convincing people with in a lot of the stuff you say.
Although
I think
I'm
sometimes
very
it is.
smart.
I think
You think
sometimes it is intellectual rigor, and I think that the relationship over time helps, because you crack open the, Luke, I was talking about you the other day, Luke, to say that your use of catchphrases, and you would just say these over and over again. And I was like, I don't know if I would have like the social wherewithal to participate in something like that, but it is effective. And I realized, like, over time, I was like, wow, he said that so many times, and I just used it in conversation. And
You need
I
saving
knew what he
throw.
meant by it.
But that's what I mean, where it kind of blossoms open. Can I ask you something, Mitch? Like, the whole, first of all, I want to say timestamp. What was it, like a minute, 1 hour, 12 minutes or something? What Luke said there was really good. I'm going to have to go back and listen to it with the Israel being community, Christ being the particular. I thought that was really good. The other thing is, I heard Rocket Man playing, so I don't want to skip over that.
I saw you singing.
David Bowie, it's an alien, as Craig said.
It's not David Bowie, is it?
Yeah, it's David Bowie, right?
No, it's Elton John.
No,
right?
it's Elton John. What am I thinking? Oh my gosh. Oh,
Destroyed with facts and logic.
Yeah. But no, I was going to ask you about the truth and mercy thing, because that seemed to be like one of those things, like I would say all the time, and then it didn't. I remember when you said it finally clicked for you was when what was that movie that you told me to watch that was forever long? Magnolia. And the scene in Magnolia, and it when he says the law is the law, but what can we forgive? And then you were like, there's truth and mercy. And then it kind of, that's what I mean though. It was like a phrase that kept being said that wasn't like, you know what I mean? It's like it kind of like, it's almost like it germinates and then it opens up later. And that seemed to be like how you were talking about some of the
I'm including all of this when I talk about conversion being ideal, conversion being a good thing, conversion being loving. I'm including that type, that thrust of conversion, that you would enter into a relationship with someone, that you would open your heart to them, that you would let them open their heart to you. All of this is caught up in that. But I think we should be trying to convert each other to our ideas.
But I think Christianity is also, I really do think it is the religion that's not a religion, because in order to, I think you can, and I think you see this all throughout the New Testament, is that people can be converted to Christianity without losing their own traditions. Like, this is, I talk about that with a new perspective on Paul. Like, you can be a Christian and not stop being a Jew. Keep being a Jew. You're a Jew, great. But I think you can also be a Christian.
If I was trying to convert Mitch to my ideas, this could become an unwelcoming space. If that's what I like, And I mean, everyone says something that I think's wrong. It's like, I don't need to try to go ahead and convert everyone on all the things that I think people are
But
wrong
on some
on.
things, right? On some things you do.
Well, so
No.
like this is the thing. People disagree.
Like I just did it. Like the thing I just said was the thing that I think's most important, right? Like it's not the thing I disagreed with you on. It's the ability to notice what's most important to disagree about, right? That's the thing that's most important.
So Chad said, "Was God good when he told Satan you can't kill Job, but he could, but he didn't say he couldn't kill his family?"
Like
Why'd you have
Yes.
to ask that?
I have an operative limitation to my theology which prevents me from ever saying God is bad.
You know where I'll answer him? I'll say, where were you when he set the stars in the sky? Where were you, Chad? Why would you ask that?
So this, I don't know enough about Noahides. John is saying the Noahide movement would disagree with me. I'm assuming they're saying about that you can be a Christian and continue being a Jew.
there's
They,
he might not know what he's talking about.
Maybe,
from what
I don't know.
from
The-
what,
the
a little
Noah-
bit. Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead, Gavin.
I was just because I mean I think that they would say that you it would probably be the Trinity piece that and you have the people who are kind of stuck in the logic frame of the Trinity who maybe can't see that there's a form of Trinity in which there's a unity, a wholeness.
Yeah.
And so it can be it's a point of contention, I think.
But like even that stuff is super complicated because like I sent this to Chezi the other day and he was saying, yeah, Jews don't really talk about this stuff a lot and it's parts of Kabbalah, but like this, and I maybe sent it to you too, Jason, but like this esoterica guy was talking about like the origins of the Kabbalistic Sephirot remain mysterious even after more than a century of historical research. However, recent studies have shown how an otherwise purely monotheistic theology began to generate a system of multiple divine emanations, attempting to bridge the gap between the divine transcendence and immanence. Early medieval Jewish theologians, philosophers, and mystics began to transform the divine glory, which I don't know the Hebrew word, into a quasi-angelic being. More esoteric circles would eventually speculate that this, quote, unique cherub, which is another Hebrew term, known as Akatriel, was actually an emanated manifest aspect of the divine visible to prophets and mystics, but not the target of prayer, which was reserved for the hidden glory, another Hebrew term. This divine angelic emanation circle would greatly contribute to the proto-Kabbalistic speculation that would eventually give rise to the system of the Sephirot. So like that's all, and like even this image, like when you look at it, it's like a man,
Yes,
that one that Jacob always has of like the divine emanation of things. It's just they have all of that in like this speculative, theoretical, spiritual realm. It's just Christianity just makes that hard personal in a human being and says it's the fullness of God.
That's what I mean. Even when talking to Jacob, and it was some of our earlier conversations where we talked about that, he bring up that image, and when you get to the bottom, you arrive back at the top. So it's like, yeah. So and he brings up the image. The image on his background a lot of times is the the name of God with the other letter inside of it or something. So it's like all contained within itself. Seems very similar to a lot of the stuff where I arrive at theologically in Christianity.
Yes, but it's all. But I stress so much the personal though, and like this is it's called the patristic ordo in the Eastern Church.
Yeah.
You don't move from the abstract principles and ideas and then reason to the person. You start with the person. The person is the center of all being. And this is why I've talked about a lot. I mean, I've been talking about relational ontology in this corner ever since I was in here. And then like Peugeot and all these other guys, it starts to become popular and PVK is just like, oh, relational ontology. Cool.
Yeah.
But like you have, I mean, the most simple idea and way to think about it, I've said this. And again, this is abstract, but if you don't want to just take on faith that the person is the center of everything, I'll give you an abstraction. So like you have the static monad. And if you know in like math, the monad, it's just like the thing, it's like divine simplicity and aseity. There are no parts. It's one thing, a point on a page. It's just like a monad. And then you could move into dualism where there's two things.
Yeah.
But what's implicit in that is there's a tacit, hidden, implicit third, which is why you can even distinguish between the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the background, the space.
Yeah.
So a dualism will collapse into, you either have to have some sort of implicit relationality there, which then collapses into some sort of form of triad, or you have to say it's all an illusion and it collapses into a static monad. You have to have a dynamic monism or some kind of a triad relational thing, or else everything is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
You either have to say this is delusion, there is no meaning, or you have to say it's a relation.
Yeah.
And that's a person, I
Uh-huh.
would say, as a Christian.
Yeah. I feel like. Go ahead.
I'm just gonna like, if you ever get into like fruit trees, they have this thing, you can have a root stock and then you can like graft on like a different stock of the fruit in order to produce different fruit. And then you like, this whole grafting thing is like, for me, how I approach, like it's my stillman of the Trinity, and this whole grafting in onto like the roots and the trunk and the branches. And so like, it's very possible, like this is the the Christianity that I'm familiar with, and I'm a very baby new infant to it, is like that, like I'm trying to graft into God through Jesus, right? And so what is the branch? What is the branch? And it's like it's a representation and a means to connect with like that which is like in the earth, it's just grounded, which is like providing, sustaining, and all of that. So it's like I just kind of go towards agricultural thinking.
But see, to riff on that, and completely so bad comedy. Yeah, you said Luke's so far over my head. I can see
the Trinity in a tree.
Yeah, he's so far over my head most of the time. Like, yeah, I know some of those words, but that's the thing. Is like, you don't. This is the great thing about belief, true belief. You don't have to know any of this shit.
Yeah.
You don't have to know any of this.
Yeah,
You have to understand agriculture. You have to know how do you cultivate a loving plant or a child, or like, this is the simple parishioner. This is why I go to church, or love people, or, follow these commandments, love God, love your neighbor. Like, it's very basic. It's just scaling. It's just, this is like, you can talk about it at the most esoteric levels, because some people will need that to follow the logic path all the way down to die, so that they can die to their own ego in order to get into the fullness of it. But you don't need to know any of this. I just like talking about nerdy things.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking, my mind was weirdly trying to connect everything we've talked about all at once, and I was like, I don't know if I should even try to do this at this point. With the monads, and back to when Mitch was talking about Jesus and everything else. But it feels like
have a seizure if you do it.
It feels like it's as simple as that, though, Luke, too, and that's why people will often point to Jesus, because it is like the simple point where you can be like, this is the very, very personal, salvific way of being in the world. So try to emanate this. But what that looks like is loving God, but also loving man. And I feel like, even with the Noahide thing, like, because my mind was trying to connect that too. What I've heard with that is a lot of it is kind of a push against Christianity, because they see Christianity as idolatry. But I feel like where Christianity actually falls into idolatry is when it gets fixated on that monad, and then it's so fixated on it that it's there's no more even allowance for Christ in you, or Christ in someone else, or this or that. And so I think that kind of gets back even to what Mitch was talking about with Moses, where I've told Mitch this a bunch of times. I'm like, I think that's where I see Christ in Moses the most, or the Spirit of Christ, or the Spirit of God, whatever you want to call it, the Holy Spirit, and the life-giving Spirit in Moses, when he says, forgive them. Like, if you're not a God who forgives, blot me out of your book. Like, I need that forgiving Spirit, that life-giving Spirit, more than anything else. And to me, that's where I see Christ in Moses. But then I guess even getting all the way back to that point, what I was going to ask too is like, what if there needs to be this, or if we feel that tension of the distinction of like, there needs to be that particular monad of Christ. It's like, what do I do with Christ in me? What do I do with Moses veiling his face when he's seeing God face to face. Because when you're looking, as in water, face reflects face, right? So when you're looking at God's face to face, you're going to start to reflect his face. And so why does he veil his face? And then what about, and then what's the difference in Esau when Jacob goes to see Esau and Esau forgives him and he says, I see your face like God's face? Isn't the image of God revealed in Christ's face? So it's like, what do you do with all that stuff? It's like there has to be this weird allowance for Christ even in your enemies, or you lose the world, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I do still feel that tension for just the particularity, because it does seem to be like it is. There's utility in it being so incredibly simple, of just being like, here is this one man, Jesus. This is his story. Like, do this or something, or look at this and try to be that personally. I don't know. Did I tie it together, or did any make sense?
I apologize. I was half listening.
Oh my gosh!
Because I'm looking
listening to Rocket Man.
Because I'm looking at comments, but I think this is related to what you're saying. Like, this is why I would say that my talking against confessionalism does not then in turn become confessional, because I'm not excluding the people who are still just like shit posting about me all the time, like Anselman and T-Grog. Like, I want them in here. I'm highlighting their comments. Like, I mean, I don't know how many times Anselman has called, or in T-Grog, they probably both called me a heretic over 10 times in this stream.
Jesus Christ is God become man.
And said I'm not a Christian. So I was just going to look up this passage. Because
the accusation of heretic is actually the means by which
people
do heresy. Like the accusation of heretic, which then could lead to like the exiling. Like, that is heresy. The exiling.
Yeah. Well, and it's like,
but I don't know that. So this is an interesting comment though, because I feel like I can kind of understand the spirit he's saying that in, and I feel like it's just as true to say Jesus Christ is man becoming God as much as it is him becoming man. Like, I don't think I would deny that statement, but I don't think I would.
Well, and then again, this is the whole thing in this corner. What does it mean to deny that? Propositionally?
Yeah.
Again, that's not the fullness of what it means to believe that, Anselman. Get out of the propositional realm. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's not exclusively that, man. It's just not.
That's the top down you were talking
Jesus?
about.
Am I Antichrist when I forget this?
Because of this, Anselman, you have to reconcile it with this. There are many who said, Lord, Lord, didn't I do this? Didn't I do this? Didn't I do this? Depart from me, I never knew you. The sense of denial that you're talking about, people can affirm it. People can affirm that Christ is Lord and never know him. So it's not the same thing. It's not one-to-one.
But people who know him should still affirm it.
Well, yeah. If you go back to Anselman's comment about the God becoming man, you don't have to pull it back up, but
this one
that reminds me of the Tree of Life image you brought up, and that's why I was saying once you get to the bottom, it flips back to the top. Like, if you go from the top down, it's like that's the king. I think the one at the top is Malkut, which is like, or something like that. It means like Lord, King. And then it goes all the way down to the bottom. And then the bottom are like the feet, but that's creation. And then when it gets to the bottom, what is it in Song of Solomon's? It says the woman, the mother, crowns the king. Like the queen mother crowns the king. So the creation will crown the king again. You are my glory and joy. Like, we are his glory and joy. So it's like, you have that. I get it. That's what I mean. Like, I can affirm what he's saying. It's not like I deny it. God becoming man, but then man also is becoming God. And it's like those two are happening.
It's the second part of the sentence. You are Antichrist if you deny it. Like, that's the part where, like, I just want everyone to remember that Antichrist is in you. The Christ that the Antichrist is in you. Like, and it could pop up at any moment. Like, it's like, it's
so
not
recognize
like
it
a win.
and reject it, right?
Always freaks
recognize
me
it
out.
and reject it. If you can even notice it, it's so subtle, such a sneaky bitch, It's like that I just.
But if you can recognize, reject.
Well,
Amen.
here's the what always freaks me out is the part in the Gospels where Jesus, they're sitting around the table and Jesus is like, one of you will betray me, and all of them are like, is it me? Is it me? That's how I feel all the time. I'm just like, oh my god.
And then they all
Oh,
do
no,
betray
it's
him.
gotta be
And then
me.
they all do betray him, but then they are the foundation of the church.
Man, who is that was saying in Second Corinthians when it, I think 7, when it talks about godly grief and grief that leads to death, or you know what I'm talking about,
Godly
godly
sorrow.
repentance.
Yeah.
They were drawing the comparison. I thought it was so cool between, Peter betrays Jesus and he has a godly grief because it leads him to repentance and a zeal to have to see himself restored, and Judas has a repentance or a grief that leads to death. I was like, wow, that really does seem like it maps onto that. Sorry, that's a tangent.
No, that was good. I like it.
Yeah, the "is it me" question is haunting.
Is it I?
Right? Yeah.
It's so haunting, man. That freaks me out.
It's like salvation through self-doubt.
Yeah.
All right.
Self-doubt, Thomas, man. I think Thomas is probably one of my favorite disciples. And my Lord and my God statement is just.
Yeah, I was just looking up this. It's John 2:22. It's actually, I read that passage and did a live stream about it, actually, Anselm.
1 John. Okay, we should go through that because that freaking writer is just. I have no
John?
idea. It's so crazy because he speaks in absolutes. He speaks it like he writes very black and white, and then he'll write one thing, and then the next sentence it's the opposite of what he writes. And I'm always like, what is this guy doing? I just think he understands things on a whole nother level that, like, I'm still stuck in this space of just black and white thinking, and I can't get there. And when John writes, he's just able to speak that way with that language. Because try reading 1 John and take it seriously, and try reading every sentence like an absolute truth. And it's like you just have to fall on your knees and just be like, God, forgive me.
I don't know. It's just that verse just is like, I can remember when I'm being the king or trying to be the king, right? I'm not treating Jesus as king. I'm treating Jesus as like beneath me or something. And then when I was doing that, or when I do it, hopefully I don't do it. It's like, it's true. The verse is true. I've seen it in me, right? And it could happen again, right? Like, and then I'll be like, oh man, I messed up.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Gavin. I think that's just, and I think that's stuff we all need to hear, and I need to continually hear too, because that is that's what, like Luke says all the time too. Christ and Antichrist are hairs breadth away.
It's practical and pragmatic. It's
like
applicable.
Like heavenly Jerusalem is also just like a hair's breadth away from heavenly Babylon. Like even Lilith are just like a hair's breadth away. What is that? The Esther is like the Virgin of Virgins, and she's also the star of Venus. But then that's also Lucifer, if I understand right. So it's like, it's just so close. How you are fallen from heaven, a Lucifer, son of the morning.
I do want to point maybe a criticism toward Anselm is that, like, there are ways of speaking which will cause people to not want to make Jesus king, right? Right. And so, like, that relationship to making Jesus king, that's what's most important. And then there are ways of speaking which will be a stumbling block for people entering into that kind of relationship. So it's not a direct, explicit criticism, but it's like, be careful with your words. Maybe you can help people enter into that relationship with your words, or you can discourage them from doing it.
Because words are magic, right? Like spell casting. I heard you say that the other day. I was like, why do I always miss these things?
Luke pointed at it too with the he had the last live stream with I forget the author that you were pointing at, who
Alan Moore
talking about, man, our words are powerful. And then Taya comes in and hits Luke with a Christianity or TLC, like, say, be careful with them words, Luke. And that's Anselm's point. He's saying, be careful with your words, Luke. And then you can turn it back and say, be careful with your words, Anselm.
Yeah.
When does it end?
Never is.
Neil says, I love it. Anselman is at the top of the mountain looking down. Luke is circumambulating, picking up the lost sheep. I love the idea of the bodhisattva. You know, it's like,
That's a beautiful
I'll
point.
go back. I'll go back for the lost sheep. I mean, I
go
will
to the
not.
throne room and you're going to figure out Jesus isn't there. Jesus is out
Oh,
there. Jesus is outside the kingdom going looking for the sheep.
You just became.
I wouldn't make the
Peter
same.
Rollins.
I wouldn't make the same analogy as Neil just did. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Anselman was about the same word.
I think he is
But getting
too,
lost
but I
sheep.
think in these streams and when he's talking, it's like all the language. But that's kind of to Gavin's point.
You
is
may be
he's
receiving
saying,
it wrong too. Like I think Anselman's trying to do a loving thing with his words, right? And we just got to make sure we don't misinterpret and misunderstand Anselman.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And this is the whole thing with intentions and reality. Like only the psychopaths are the ones who are intending harm. Everyone else is intending the good. You know, this is like C.S. Lewis's point, I think, with the benevolent dictator, right? He's like, the robber baron will just come and rob from you because he gets what he wants and he leaves you alone. The benevolent dictator will torture you forever for your own good. Like, good intentions. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. To quote my last evangelical pastor, I learned a long time ago to stop judging people's intentions. It's a complete waste of time.
I want to get going soon. But I just want to say, like, I felt something like a miracle recently where my heart softened toward Mark Lefebvre, right?
Oh,
I would hear Mark Lefebvre and I would want to throw up and become angry. And then all of a sudden now I'm like, well, I go back and listen and I'm like, what was wrong? What was wrong? Why did I? And it's like, that's a miracle that can happen. Like we can actually have hard hearts. We can be blind. We can
totally
be unable to hear things. And then there can be a miracle. And, you know, I'll have to answer this point. That's when I should say, thank you, Jesus. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to leave it there.
That was beautiful, Gavin. I think that's the same thing because I could be sitting here and I do this sometimes looking at Anselman or T. Grog's points, calling me a heretic. See you, buddy. And I could be saying like, it's kind of like the idea of the light of God, and the reality of God is just the light that shines on you. And when you're facing it, it's like the glory of God. And when you turn away from it, it feels like heat. I don't know who said this recently in a podcast. And so a lot of that has to be your orientation and your perspective. So like, you know, Mark Lefebvre or someone criticizing you, if you turn away from God's grace to you in that, it can feel like hell. But like, what is God teaching me here?
Yeah.
You know, is this criticism? Like, if you respond to that criticism out of like antagonism, it's all in the ego anyhow. You're just like, no, affirm me, don't criticize me.
Yeah. It reminds me of when David's leaving, when Absalom takes over his kingdom, and David's leaving, and then some guy's throwing rocks at him, and his soldier in the army is like, let me go up and kill that guy, and David's like, no, God told him to curse me and throw rocks at me. He's like, perhaps,
dude, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so, what do we want to pin, Neil? This? Every member of my Tuesday and Thursday Bible study are less knowledgeable Anselmen. I love them, and they have helped me immensely. Is that what you wanted me to pin and talk about? I don't know. All right, I'm about to.
You guys,
I think I'm going to go through some
Paul
of these
doing
comments.
his stream?
Huh?
Is Paul doing his stream today? PPK?
I think so.
Sorry,
he might be
Pastor PPK. Oh my goodness.
It might be nowish because he's having the symbolic world. Because are you in Florida? Go to the symbolic world thing. Tackle Jordan Peterson.
There's a symbolic world thing in Florida? I didn't know that.
Yes, it's happening right now.
What? I had no idea. Where is it? In Jacksonville?
I think. Where is
Jacksonville.
I don't know. Somebody put in the comments. Where is it? Because Christian Baxter's down there.
What? I don't know. Christian Baxter. I know that.
I've always said this. Mark is an anti-Hegelian. Perfect. Love it. God bless him.
Well, you got to tune into that live stream, man.
Tarpon
Springs. Call my father back. Tarpon Springs. I don't know where that is.
Google it.
I'm like right now. I'm center east, about above Orlando. So
okay, Fleegus.
Might be on my way home.
I just don't like it when people say Anselman is antithetical to our beautiful, precious TLC spirit. Well, here's the thing. I think, again, 1 Corinthians verse, I think I can say that while not excluding him.
Yeah, there's a have you seen The Life Aquatic movie? That was like my favorite movie for a long time.
No, not
But
enough. I maybe have, but I don't remember anything about it.
But there's a line in it where Bill Murray, he's talking about because he's a marine biologist, there's another guy, and they're kind of adversaries. But he walks up and he says, "Be nice to Ali, he's my nemesis." So that's kind of how I feel about Anselman.
Totally.
Be nice to Anselman, he's your nemesis. Yeah.
Right, or it's the David thing. It's just like, don't go kill that guy. God told him to throw those rocks at me.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. All right, that's a good word to end on. Call your dad. And
All right.
sorry, Mitch.
Goodbye.
Stream. Bye.